The screen flickered alive, and I froze. My heart thudded so hard it felt like the sound filled the quiet living room. I had forgotten to tell my son that the camera in the hallway was working again. For weeks, it had been broken, collecting dust while I promised myself I'd get around to fixing it. But last weekend, I finally did. Tonight was the first time I checked the footage since it came back online. And what I saw on that screen, I couldn't breathe. My hand hovered above the mouse, trembling. My eyes refused to blink, as if they were glued to the scene. My son was there, but not the way I had ever seen him before. He wasn't just walking through the hall, or sneaking food from the fridge. No, it was something else, something that made me feel like the ground was slipping under me. I leaned in closer, whispering, "Oh my God." And that's where everything shifted. It all started 3 months ago when our lives seemed painfully ordinary. I live in a small town in Ohio, the kind where people smile at you in the grocery store even if they don't know you. My name's David, and I work long hours in construction management. My wife, Laura, is a nurse who spends nights on call, leaving me to watch over our 12-year-old son, Ethan. Ethan has always been a sweet kid. Sensitive, maybe a little too sensitive sometimes. He's the type who would cry if he saw a hurt bird on the sidewalk and wouldn't sleep until we found a way to help it. At school, though, that kindness sometimes worked against him. Kids his age don't always understand compassion. They saw him as weak. One afternoon, Ethan came home with his backpack torn and his lip bleeding. I'll never forget the way he tried to hide it. He walked straight past me, muttering, "I'm fine, Dad," as he went to his room. But when I followed him, I found him sitting on the floor, holding his face in his hands. His shoulders shook, and I knew he was crying. "Ethan," I said softly, kneeling down. "Talk to me." "They won't stop, Dad," he whispered. "Every day it's something. They call me names, push me around. They say I'm weird because I care too much." I hugged him, but inside, I was boiling. I wanted to storm into that school and demand answers. But I also knew anger wouldn't solve this. What Ethan needed most was someone to listen, someone to remind him that kindness wasn't weakness. "You're not weird," I told him. "You're strong in ways they don't understand yet. Don't let their cruelty change who you are." He looked up at me, tears streaking his cheeks. "But what if it never stops?" I didn't have an answer. That night, I stayed awake longer than usual, pacing the living room, trying to think of what to do. Laura was working late, and the house felt empty except for the sound of the fridge humming. That's when I remembered the security cameras. We had installed them a year earlier after a few break-ins happened in the neighborhood. But one camera, the one in the hallway near Ethan's room, had stopped working. I kept telling myself I'd fix it, but life got busy, and it stayed broken. "Maybe it's time to fix it," I muttered to myself. Not because I didn't trust Ethan, but because something in me wanted to understand him better. He was growing up so fast, and I could feel there were things he wasn't telling me. Kids hide things from their parents. Maybe the camera would help me see what he was going through when he thought no one was watching. So that weekend, I pulled out the old wires, replaced the camera, and got it back online. Ethan didn't notice, or maybe he did, but he never said anything. And I forgot to tell him it was working again. Days passed, and life seemed to settle into its ordinary rhythm again. Ethan went to school, came home, did his homework, and spent hours in his room. I'd peek in sometimes and see him drawing in his sketchbook. He loved sketching animals, superheroes, even characters he made up. One night, I found one of his drawings left on the kitchen table. It was a picture of a boy with big tears in his eyes, standing in front of a crowd of kids who were pointing and laughing. My heart ached as I traced the pencil marks with my finger. Ethan was pouring his pain into his art. I told myself I'd talk to him about it later. But then work got hectic, and Laura picked up extra shifts. Time slipped away. Then came the night that changed everything. I was sitting in the living room, exhausted after a long day, when I decided to check the hallway camera. It had been weeks since I fixed it, and curiosity tugged at me. I clicked on the screen, expecting to see nothing more than Ethan walking by or maybe sneaking a soda from the fridge. But what I saw instead made my blood run cold. It was late, almost midnight. Ethan should have been asleep. But there he was, standing in the hallway, holding something in his hands. His face looked different, focused, intense in a way I had never seen before. He whispered something under his breath, words I couldn't make out. I leaned closer, trying to hear. And then, the video froze for a second before resuming. And when it came back, what Ethan did next made my heart slam against my ribs. I felt myself gripping the arms of the chair, unable to look away. What was happening in front of me wasn't just unusual. It was something I never imagined I'd see from my son. And that's when the front door creaked open. Laura was home early. She set her bag down and looked at me. "Why do you look like you've seen a ghost?" I couldn't answer. My eyes were glued to the footage, my mind screaming 1,000 questions at once. But before I could say anything, something else happened on the screen that made me nearly fall out of my chair. Laura's voice startled me. "David," she said again, her tone sharper this time. "What's going on? You look pale." I tried to speak, but no words came out. My mouth opened and closed like I was gasping for air. My eyes were still locked on the screen. The hallway camera played on, and Ethan, my sweet Ethan, was doing something I couldn't make sense of. He wasn't just standing there anymore. His hands moved in patterns, almost like he was conducting an orchestra no one else could hear. In his right hand, he clutched a small box, and in his left, he held one of his sketchbooks. "What are you watching?" Laura asked, stepping closer. I snapped, Don't come near yet." Her eyebrows furrowed. "What are you talking about?" Just look," I whispered, pointing at the screen reluctantly. She leaned in, squinting. For a moment, her expression was unreadable. Then her lips parted slightly. "Is that Ethan?" "Yes," I croaked. On the screen, Ethan set the sketchbook on the floor and placed the box beside it. He crouched down, whispering again. His lips moved quickly, as though repeating words he'd practiced many times. Suddenly, he reached into the box and pulled something out, something small that glinted under the dim hallway light. Laura gasped. "What is that?" I didn't know. My heart pounded so hard my vision blurred. I wanted to run to him, to burst into the hallway and snatch whatever he was holding. But I was frozen, caught between fear and disbelief. Then, without warning, the camera feed glitched. The picture cut to black for 2 seconds. When it came back, Ethan was gone. The hallway was empty. Laura clapped her hand over her mouth. "Where did he go?" I jumped up, knocking over the chair. I don't know." I rushed down the hallway, nearly tripping over the rug. When I reached Ethan's room, the door was closed. My hand shook as I twisted the knob and pushed it open. There he was, sitting on his bed, sketchbook in his lap, calmly drawing as if nothing had happened. The box was nowhere in sight. He looked up at me, wide-eyed and innocent. "Dad, why are you staring like that?" I froze in the doorway, my heart hammering. Laura appeared behind me, silent, her hand gripping my arm like she needed to anchor herself. For a few seconds, no one said anything. The room was quiet except for the faint scratch of Ethan's pencil against paper. He tilted his head, confused. Did something happen? I forced myself to smile, though my lips felt stiff. "No, buddy. Just, couldn't sleep." Laura didn't speak. She just studied him, her face pale. Finally, she whispered, "Good night, sweetheart," and pulled me back into the hallway. She closed the door gently behind us. The moment we were out of earshot, she hissed, "What on earth did we just see?" I shook my head, running a hand through my hair. I don't know, Laura. I fixed the hallway camera last weekend. I forgot to tell him it was working. And tonight, I checked it. Her eyes widened. "And you saw him, what? Doing some kind of ritual?" "I don't know if it was a ritual," I muttered, my voice cracking. But whatever it was, it wasn't normal. He had some kind of box. He was whispering. And then, he just vanished from the feed. Laura leaned against the wall, covering her face with her hands. "Oh my God. David, he's 12 years old. 12. What could he possibly be doing?" "I don't know," I whispered again, my throat dry. For the rest of the night, neither of us slept. We sat in the living room, the glow of the screen casting eerie shadows. I replayed the footage over and over, trying to make sense of it. But every time, it ended the same way, Ethan whispering, pulling something from the box, and then vanishing from sight. By dawn, I felt like my brain was unraveling. The next morning, Ethan came downstairs like it was any other day. His hair stuck up in all directions, and he yawned as he rubbed his eyes. "Morning," he mumbled. Laura plastered on a smile. "Morning, honey. Want pancakes?" "Yeah." His eyes lit up. For a moment, he was just a kid again, excited about breakfast. Watching him laugh as he drowned his pancakes in syrup made me wonder if I had imagined the whole thing. Maybe it was a glitch. Maybe the camera was lagging, and my tired brain twisted it into something sinister. But then I remembered the way Laura gasped, the way she clutched my arm. She saw it too. After breakfast, Ethan packed his bag for school. As he tied his shoes by the door, I knelt down beside him. "Hey, buddy," I said carefully. "What were you working on last night? You seem pretty busy." He looked at me with wide, innocent eyes. "Just drawing. That's all." He nodded quickly. "Yeah. Why?" I forced a smile. "Just curious. You're a talented artist, you know." His cheeks turned pink, and he ducked his head. "Thanks, Dad." Laura squeezed my shoulder, silently warning me not to push. We watched him walk to the bus stop, his backpack bouncing. He looked so small against the gray morning sky, and I felt a pang of guilt. Whatever was happening, he was still just a boy. That day was quieter, a lull after the storm of the night before. I went to work, though my mind wasn't on blueprints or deadlines. Every hammer strike at the site sounded like the pounding of my own heart. I kept thinking about Ethan's whispering, the mysterious box, the way the camera cut out. At lunch, I called Laura. "Any ideas?" I asked. "None," she sighed. "I checked his room while he was at school. There's no box, just sketchbooks, pencils, and a pile of dirty socks under his bed." I chuckled weakly. That sounds like him. But my mind wouldn't rest. That evening, Ethan seemed unusually cheerful. He told us about a science experiment they did at school, about how one of his classmates dropped a beaker and everyone laughed. His eyes sparkled when he described how the teacher slipped on spilled water but caught himself at the last second. Laura laughed along, ruffling his hair. For a moment, the weight of last night seemed lighter. Maybe we were overreacting. But then bedtime came. "Good night, Mom." "Good night, Dad," Ethan said, hugging us both. "Good night, buddy," I said, kissing the top of his head. Laura and I waited until he closed his door before exchanging nervous glances. "You're going to check again, aren't you?" she whispered. I nodded. We sat in the living room, the screen glowing once more. Midnight crept closer. My stomach twisted as the clock ticked. Then it happened again. The hallway camera flickered to life, and there was Ethan, standing in the exact same spot as the night before. He clutched the sketchbook in one hand and the box in the other. His lips moved, whispering. Laura gripped my arm so hard it hurt. This time, though, he did something new. He set the box down and opened the sketchbook wide on the floor. From the box, he pulled a folded piece of paper. He placed it carefully onto the sketchbook page, then pressed his hands together like he was praying. My breath caught, and then, suddenly, the camera glitched again. When the picture returned, the paper was gone. But what replaced it made Laura scream out loud. Laura's scream echoed through the living room, sharp enough to make me jolt out of my chair. My eyes snapped back to the screen, and my blood turned cold. The piece of paper Ethan had placed on his sketchbook was gone. In its place lay something else. At first, I thought it was a shadow, some glitch of the camera lens. But then it shifted. Slowly, like it was alive. "What is that?" Laura shouted, clutching my arm. I couldn't answer. My throat had tightened like a noose. On the screen, Ethan bent over the sketchbook, staring at the strange object. It was small, maybe the size of his hand, and it shimmered faintly under the dim hallway light. It didn't look like anything I recognized. Part stone, part light, like it wasn't fully real. And then Ethan did something that made my heart hammer against my ribs. He smiled. It wasn't a nervous smile or a forced one. It was relief. Almost joy. "Oh my God," Laura whispered on the screen, Ethan picked up the shimmering object and held it close to his chest. He closed his eyes, still whispering words we couldn't hear. Then, just like the night before, the camera feed froze. For 3 seconds, the screen turned black. When it flickered back on, Ethan was gone. Again. But the hallway wasn't empty this time. There was something lying on the floor where he had been standing. A faint outline, like ash scattered in the shape of footprints. Laura buried her face into her hands. David, I can't do this. What is happening to our son? I forced myself to move, my body stiff as wood. I need to check on him. No, don't. She tried to grab my arm, but I pulled away. I sprinted down the hall, my feet pounding the hardwood floor. My hands shook as I grabbed Ethan's doorknob and twisted it open. And there he was, sitting on his bed, sketching, just like the night before. He looked up, startled. Dad, you scared me. I stood frozen in the doorway, my breath ragged. My eyes darted around the room. The box was gone. The sketchbook was on his lap, full of doodles of animals and superheroes. No shimmering object. No ash on the floor. Everything okay? He asked, frowning slightly. I forced a smile that felt brittle. Why, yeah, buddy. Just wanted to say goodnight again. His expression softened. Good night, Dad. I backed out of the room slowly, closing the door. Laura was waiting in the hallway, her face pale. Well, she whispered. He's just drawing. She shook her head. David, this isn't right. Kids don't just vanish from cameras. They don't make glowing rocks appear out of thin air. I swallowed hard. We can't let him know we're watching. Not yet. We have to figure out what this is first. The next morning felt surreal. Ethan bounded down the stairs, cheerful as ever. He poured himself a bowl of cereal, humming under his breath. Laura and I exchanged wary glances. Did he even remember what happened last night? Or was it all hidden from him somehow? Big plans for school today? I asked, trying to sound casual. He shrugged. Not really. We're working on a group project in science. Oh, and Ms. Miller said we could bring in stuff from home that inspires us. Like something personal. Laura nearly dropped her coffee mug. Something personal. Yeah, Ethan said with a grin. I think I'll bring one of my drawings. I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. At least he didn't mention the box. As soon as he left for school, Laura turned to me. David, we need to talk. I know. She sat at the kitchen table, clutching her coffee like it was the only thing keeping her grounded. Do you think he's in some kind of trouble? Like maybe someone gave him that box? I hesitated. Maybe. Or maybe he made it himself. Her eyes widened. He's 12. He can't just make whatever that was. I rubbed my temples, the pressure in my head building. I don't know what's happening, Laura. But I know one thing, we can't ignore it. That afternoon, I left work early. Something inside me kept whispering that I needed to check Ethan's room before he came home. I drove straight home, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tight my knuckles turned white. When I walked into the house, it felt colder than usual. Laura had already beaten me there. I found her in Ethan's room, kneeling on the floor, searching under the bed. Nothing, she muttered. I've checked everywhere. I scanned the room. Sketchbooks stacked on the desk. A pile of clothes in the corner. Posters of superheroes on the wall. It looked like any normal boy's room. But then I noticed something. The rug. It was slightly off-center, like it had been moved recently. I knelt down and pulled it aside. My breath caught. Beneath it, etched into the wooden floor, was a symbol. A circle with jagged lines branching out, like lightning bolts. It was faint, scratched in pencil, but it pulsed with something I couldn't explain. Laura gasped. What is that? I don't know. My voice trembled. Before either of us could say more, we heard the sound of the front door opening. Ethan was home. Mom, Dad, he called out cheerfully. Panic surged through me. I quickly pushed the rug back over the symbol, heart racing. Laura and I scrambled to our feet just as Ethan appeared in the doorway. He eyed us suspiciously. What are you doing in my room? I forced a laugh. Just, cleaning. You know, helping you out." He frowned. "You never clean my room." "First time for everything, right?" I said, ruffling his hair. He rolled his eyes and plopped onto his bed. "Okay, weirdos." Laura tugged at my sleeve, silently urging me to leave. We stepped into the hallway, shutting the door behind us. Her face was pale. "David, that symbol, it means something." "I know." That night, we didn't dare check the camera. We were too shaken, too scared of what we might see. The following days dragged on in a haze of unease. Ethan acted normal, laughing at dinner, telling us about school, doodling in his sketchbooks. But Laura and I couldn't shake the memory of that glowing object, of the strange symbol on his floor. I found myself watching him more closely. Every time he smiled, I wondered, what secrets are you hiding, son? One evening, as we cleared the table after dinner, Ethan looked at me and asked, "Dad, do you ever feel like you have a power inside you? Like you could do something big if you just figured out how?" I froze, a plate in my hand. "What do you mean?" He shrugged casually, but there was something in his eyes, something deeper. "I don't know. Sometimes I feel like I'm supposed to do more than just be a kid. Like I'm supposed to help people." My throat tightened. That's a good thing, Ethan. Wanting to help people. But sometimes the best way to do that is through small acts of kindness. You don't need powers to make a difference. He smiled faintly, almost sadly. "Yeah, I guess." That night, after he went to bed, I told Laura what he said. She bit her lip. "David, what if he really does think he has powers? What if that box, whatever it is, convinced him?" I didn't know how to answer. It was 3 nights later when everything came crashing down again. Laura was working late at the hospital, leaving me alone with Ethan. He went to bed at his usual time, but I couldn't shake the tension twisting in my gut. By midnight, I gave in. I turned on the camera feed, and there he was. Ethan stood in the hallway, holding the box again. This time, though, he wasn't whispering. He was crying. Silent tears streamed down his face as he clutched the box to his chest. My stomach clenched. He set the box on the floor, opened it, and pulled out not one but 2 shimmering objects. They glowed faintly, lighting up his face. He whispered something, this time louder. I could almost hear it through the speakers. "Please, help me protect them." Them. He meant us. The screen flickered, and when the picture returned, Ethan wasn't alone anymore. Standing behind him in the hallway was a figure. Tall. Shadowy. Its shape shifted, like smoke trapped in human form. I shot to my feet, my chair toppling over. My heart slammed against my chest. "Oh God!" I whispered. The figure raised its hand slowly, reaching toward Ethan. And that's when the screen went black. The screen was pitch black. My chest heaved as I leaned closer, praying it was just a glitch, just another stupid freeze in the system. I tapped the mouse, smacked the side of the monitor, and whispered frantically, "Come on, come on." Then, the feed flickered back. I wish it hadn't. Because when the picture returned, Ethan was still there in the hallway. His face streaked with tears, his hands clutching those glowing objects tight against his chest. But he wasn't alone anymore. The shadowy figure loomed over him, tall and shifting like smoke in human shape. Its edges blurred, as if it wasn't bound by the rules of this world. It raised one long arm toward him, the fingers stretched out like claws made of mist. Ethan didn't flinch. Instead, he whispered again, louder this time, and I swear I heard his words through the faint hiss of the camera speakers. "Please, help me protect them." Them. Me and Laura. My stomach dropped. The shadow stopped. For a moment, it froze, almost like it was listening. Then, slowly, it lowered its hand. "What the hell is happening?" I muttered under my breath. Laura wasn't home to see this. It was just me and my son and whatever that thing was. I leapt to my feet, heart pounding. Every part of me screamed to run down that hallway, to grab Ethan, to pull him away from the dark figure. But another part of me, the part that had frozen in front of the screen so many nights now, hesitated because Ethan didn't look afraid. His face, though wet with tears, was calm, determined, like he knew exactly what he was doing. The shadow bent lower, almost kneeling in front of him. Then, in a voice that wasn't sound but a vibration through the speakers, I heard it whisper back. A sound so faint, so broken, I could barely make out the words. Only if you are strong enough. Ethan nodded. The screen glitched again. And when it returned, the hallway was empty. No Ethan. No shadow. Just silence. I stumbled backward, slamming into the wall. My whole body shook. No, 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 I muttered. I sprinted down the hallway and burst into Ethan's room. There he was, sitting on his bed, pencil in hand, sketchbook open. He looked up, startled. Dad, why do you keep barging in? I stood there, panting, my chest on fire. What are you doing, Ethan? He frowned. Drawing. I looked at the sketchbook. Sure enough, just doodles. A superhero, a dragon, a tree. Nothing unusual. But his hands, they trembled slightly. And on his cheek, faint but there, was the trace of a tear. My heart clenched. I wanted to ask him everything. About the box, about the glowing stones, about the shadow. But something in his eyes stopped me. He looked fragile. Wounded. Like if I pressed too hard, he'd shatter. So instead, I forced a shaky smile. Okay, buddy. Good night. He studied me for a second longer, then gave a small smile back. Good night, Dad. I closed the door and leaned against it, my breath ragged. I had never felt so terrified, and so helpless. The next day, Laura noticed immediately that something was wrong. You didn't sleep, she said, her eyes narrowing as I sipped my coffee. I shook my head. No. She sat down across from me, her hand covering mine. Tell me. So I did. Every word. The shadow. The whisper. The deal. By the time I finished, her face was as pale as the hospital sheet she worked with. David, she whispered. This isn't just bullying anymore. This isn't just a boy with a sketchbook. Something else is happening to him. I know, I said hoarsely. She pulled her hand back, pressing her fingers against her lips. But he's still our son. Whatever this is, we can't just treat him like he's dangerous. I don't want to, I said, my throat tightening. But Laura, he's talking to shadows. Shadows that answer back. Her eyes filled with tears. Maybe they're not all bad. Maybe whatever this is, it chose him for a reason. You saw it. He asked it to protect us. I wanted to believe her. God, I wanted to. But the sound of that whisper, cold, broken, still rang in my ears. Later that afternoon, I picked Ethan up from school. He climbed into the car, his backpack bouncing, his cheeks flushed from the cold air. How was school, buddy? I asked, forcing cheer into my voice. He shrugged. Okay. Silence stretched between us as I drove. Finally, I said, Hey, I was thinking maybe this weekend we could do something together. Just you and me. Fishing, maybe. Or we could go to the arcade. His eyes flicked toward me, then back to the window. Sure, Dad. His voice was flat. My chest ached. When we got home, he went straight to his room. I lingered outside the door, listening to the faint scratch of his pencil. For a moment, I thought about barging in again, about demanding the truth. But then I remembered what Laura said. Kindness. Empathy. So instead, I knocked lightly and said, I'm proud of you, Ethan. For everything. The scratching paused. Then, softly, he said, Thanks, Dad. I walked away, my heart breaking and healing all at once. That night, Laura and I debated whether to check the camera again. I can't, she whispered, shaking her head. Not tonight. I can't see that thing again. So I sat alone in the living room, staring at the blank screen, my finger hovering over the mouse. For hours, I resisted, but curiosity won. At 12:30, I clicked. The hallway appeared. Empty. Silent. I waited, and then, there he was. Ethan stepped into view, the box clutched in his arms. His face was pale, his eyes rimmed with red like he'd been crying again. He set the box down, opened it, but this time, instead of pulling out glowing stones, he pulled out photographs. My breath caught. They were pictures of us. Me. Laura. Him. Smiling at the park. Eating ice cream. Laughing on the couch. He spread them carefully across the floor. Then he knelt, placed his hands on them, and whispered, "Please, keep them safe." My vision blurred with tears. Then the shadow appeared again. But it wasn't alone. 2 more shadows slipped from the corners of the screen. Taller, darker, moving closer. And all 3 of them turned their heads, slowly, toward the camera. Directly at me, they were looking at me. Not Ethan. Not the photographs on the floor. Me. Their heads snapped in unison, the blurred contours of their faces aligning with the lens of the camera. For a moment, I thought it was just coincidence. Just my exhausted brain seeing connections that weren't there. But then one of them tilted its head. Slow. Deliberate. And through the faint hum of the speakers, I heard a sound that wasn't sound at all, more like thought, forced through static. "Father." The word hit me like a punch to the chest. I stumbled back, my knees buckling against the edge of the couch. My lungs burned. They weren't just part of Ethan's world anymore. They saw me. They knew me. On the screen, Ethan looked up. "Not him," he whispered fiercely. "Leave him alone. This is my choice. Not his." The tallest shadow leaned closer to him. Its mouth, or what I thought was its mouth, moved, though no real features marked its face. The vibration came again, shaking through my bones. "The bond is not yours alone." Then, as if pulled by invisible strings, all 3 shadows rose, stretched, and dissolved into the walls. The camera feed flickered, then stabilized. Ethan sat alone in the hallway, his tiny body hunched over the photographs. He buried his face in his hands, and the screen went black. I couldn't breathe. My chest was locked, my mind racing. They knew me. They weren't just figments of Ethan's imagination or trauma. They were something real, something intelligent, something that could look through the camera, through the screen, and into me. I slammed the laptop shut and stumbled to the kitchen. My hands shook as I grabbed the counter for balance. Laura's footsteps pattered down the stairs. She stopped when she saw me. "David, what happened?" I tried to answer, but the words tangled in my throat. "David," she said again, more urgent this time, gripping my arms. "What happened?" "They know," I rasped. My voice cracked, raw. "Laura, they know me. They saw me." Her face went pale. "What do you mean they saw you?" "They looked right at the camera. Right at me. And then my voice dropped to a whisper. "They called me father." Laura staggered back like I'd hit her. Her hand flew to her mouth. "No," she whispered. "No, no, no." I nodded, the tears stinging my eyes. They are not just tied to him anymore. Somehow, I'm part of this now too. She sat heavily in the chair, her whole body trembling. For a long time, neither of us spoke. Finally, she whispered, "Then maybe that's why he's been begging them. Maybe he knows it's not just about him. Maybe he's been trying to shield us." I clenched my fists, my jaw aching. The thought of my son, my 10-year-old boy, standing between us and those things, begging them to protect us instead of himself, ripped my insides apart. "I can't let him carry that alone," I said. The next morning was quieter than usual. Ethan barely spoke at breakfast. He poked at his cereal, his eyes shadowed with exhaustion. "Big day at school?" I asked, trying for normal. He shrugged. Laura reached out, brushing his hair from his forehead. "Ethan, honey, are you okay?" For a moment, I thought he'd open up. His lips parted, his eyes glassy. But then he shook his head quickly. "I'm fine." And he shoved the cereal bowl away. Laura and I shared a look. Neither of us believed him. But pressing him right then felt wrong, dangerous even. So we let it go. For now. That night, I made a decision. If the shadows could see me, then maybe I could see them back. Not through a screen. Not through Ethan. Directly. I waited until everyone was asleep. Then I went to the hallway. The air was colder there, like always. A faint hum lingered, almost too quiet to notice. I stood in the center and whispered, "I know you're here." Silence. "I saw you last night," I continued. "You saw me. You called me father. If I'm part of this too, then talk to me. For a long, agonizing moment, nothing happened. Then the shadows peeled themselves from the corners of the hallway. 1, 2, 3. Their forms stretched, rippled, and coalesced into something resembling human shapes. My legs nearly gave out, but I forced myself to stand firm. What do you want with my son? I demanded. The tallest one tilted its head. Protection requires sacrifice. My blood ran cold. What kind of sacrifice? It didn't answer. Instead, another shadow stepped closer. Its form wavered like smoke in a breeze. The child offers strength. The father carries the weight. The mother binds the thread. I swallowed hard. That's nonsense. It is truth. Their voices vibrated through me, resonating in my ribs, my teeth, my skull. You can't have him, I said, my voice breaking. He's just a boy. The third shadow leaned close, so close I felt the air thicken around me. He was chosen. My stomach dropped. Chosen for what? No answer. Just the hiss of silence, followed by the sound of my own ragged breathing. Then, as suddenly as they appeared, they were gone. The next day, I couldn't stop staring at Ethan. Every laugh, every word, every tired blink of his eyes carried weight. Was he chosen for something holy? Something monstrous? At dinner, Laura tried to talk about school, about the upcoming winter festival. Ethan gave one-word answers. His shoulders slumped. Finally, I set my fork down. Ethan, I said softly. He looked up, wary. I know about them. His face went white. I leaned forward. I saw them. They spoke to me. You don't have to carry this alone anymore. For the first time in days, his eyes filled with tears. You shouldn't have, he whispered. Now they'll follow you too. My heart cracked. Laura reached across the table, taking his hand. Then we'll carry it together. As a family. Ethan shook his head violently. No. You don't understand. They need me, not you. I asked them to protect you. That was the deal. What deal? I asked, my voice sharp. His lips trembled. He stared down at his plate. They said, if I give them my strength, they'll keep you safe. Laura gasped. I gripped the table so hard my knuckles turned white. Ethan, you don't have to give them anything. His eyes snapped up to mine, blazing with something between fear and fury. Yes, I do. Because if I don't, they'll take it from you instead. The room fell silent. My hands shook, my mind spinning. This wasn't just about shadows anymore. This was about a pact. About my son trading pieces of himself away for us. I wanted to scream, to smash something, to demand answers from the unseen. But all I could do was sit there, broken, while my son cried. That night, the shadows returned. But this time, they didn't stop in the hallway. The camera feed showed them slipping through the house like liquid darkness, spilling across the walls, stretching toward every corner. And then, without warning, the laptop screen went black. I tapped the keyboard. Nothing. Then, a whisper rose in the living room itself. Not through speakers. Not through the camera. In the air. The bond is complete. The shadows weren't just in the hallway anymore. They were here. The whisper didn't come from the laptop this time. It came from the room itself. The air rippled, heavy and charged, like before a lightning strike. My skin prickled. I turned slowly, my heart in my throat, and froze. The shadows were here. Not contained in grainy footage. Not drifting in hallways miles away from my reach. Here. The wall near the fireplace darkened, stretching like spilled ink. 3 forms pushed forward, peeling themselves free from the plaster. Limbs elongated, torsos stretched, until they stood inside my living room. Laura let out a broken gasp. She grabbed Ethan and pulled him against her chest. The tallest shadow turned toward us. The bond is complete. The words weren't spoken aloud but thundered inside my skull. I stepped in front of them without thinking, my arms spread. No, not in this house. The shadow tilted its head. The pact is broken. Ethan cried out. No, it's not. I promised you. Please, don't hurt them. His little body trembled so hard Laura could barely hold him. The second shadow swayed closer, its farm flickering like a candle flame. The father has seen. The mother has heard. The bond now belongs to all. Laura clutched Ethan tighter, tears streaming down her face. What does that mean? What do you want from us? No answer. Just silence that pressed against my eardrums until I thought I'd scream. Finally, the third shadow stretched toward Ethan. Its hand, or what resembled one, extended. Ethan shrank back, shaking his head violently. No! You can't take more. You can't. The room dimmed, the air tightening like a fist. And then, without warning, the shadows collapsed into the floor and vanished. Just gone. Leaving silence. Leaving us gasping for air. Leaving Ethan sobbing into Laura's chest. For the next hour, none of us moved. We just sat there, shaken, our breathing uneven, our hearts racing. Finally, I forced myself to speak. They are not staying in the camera anymore, I said, my voice hoarse. They are in this house now. That changes everything. Laura's eyes were wide, her face pale. David, what do we do? I had no answer. My brain screamed for solutions. Call a priest, a scientist, someone who understood. But my gut told me no one outside this house could help. This was ours. And Weiss, it had always been Ethan's. I turned to him gently. Son, I need you to tell me everything. No more secrets. No more protecting us. Please. Ethan's lip trembled. He buried his face in his hands. You won't believe me. I already do, I said firmly. We saw them too. Laura rubbed his back. Honey, we need to know. Please. Slowly, Ethan lifted his head. His eyes were red, his cheeks wet. They came to me months ago, he whispered. At night, when you thought I was asleep. They said I was chosen to carry the bond. That I could give them my strength, and in return they'd protect you both. Chosen by who? I asked. He shook his head. They never said. Just that it had to be me. That I was the only one strong enough. Laura pressed her fist against her mouth, trying not to cry. What did they take from you, Ethan? I asked softly. What did they take from you, Ethan? I asked softly. His shoulders slumped. At first, just time. They'd stand with me at night. I'd get so tired. Then they started taking my energy. That's why I'm always sleepy at school. But I thought it was worth it, because it meant you were safe. My chest ached. Oh God! Laura gathered him close. Baby, you don't ever have to give yourself away for us. We're supposed to protect you. But Ethan shook his head stubbornly. You don't understand. If I don't, they'll take from you instead. I can handle it. You can't. I clenched my fists so hard my nails dug into my palms. He was just a child, 10 years old, and yet he was carrying this burden like a soldier. It wasn't right. It wasn't fair. But before I could speak, the lights flickered. Ethan's head jerked up. They are back, he whispered. The house groaned as if under pressure. The windows rattled in their frames. I stood, placing myself between my family and the walls. Show yourselves. I shouted. For a moment, nothing. Then the shadows bled through the ceiling, dripping downward like liquid night. They stretched into shapes again, tall, looming, inescapable. The tallest one extended a hand toward me. The father will bear the weight. No, Ethan cried, scrambling forward. It's me, not him. I promised. The bond has shifted, the shadow intoned. Balance must be restored. And before I could react, the second shadow lunged. Not at me. At Laura. She screamed, stumbling back as the darkness stretched over her like a net. Ethan shrieked. No. Stop. I grabbed the nearest thing I could, the heavy lamp from the end table, and swung it wildly through the black mass. The shadow shrieked, not in sound but in vibration that shook my bones. It recoiled, dissolving back into the wall. But Laura collapsed to the floor, gasping for breath, her face pale as paper. I dropped to my knees beside her. Laura, are you okay? Her lips moved. Cold, so cold. Ethan sobbed beside her, clutching her hand. You promised me. You said you'd only take from me. The tallest shadow loomed closer, its voice a low tremor. The pact is breaking. The bond must be reforged. And then, in an instant, they vanished again, leaving Laura shivering on the floor, leaving Ethan screaming in despair, leaving me with one thought pounding in my head. We weren't just witnesses anymore. We were targets. Laura lay on the floor, trembling, her skin ice cold under my hands. "Stay with me," I whispered, my voice cracking. "Laura, please." Her eyelids fluttered, her lips pale and dry. Ethan clutched her arm, sobbing so hard he could barely breathe. "I'll get blankets," I said, scrambling to my feet. My hands shook as I pulled every throw blanket from the couch, wrapping them around her small frame. I rubbed her arms, her shoulders, anything to create warmth. "Dad," Ethan's voice was small, terrified. "It's my fault. They were supposed to take from me. Not her. Not you." I looked at him, my son, broken under a weight no child should carry, and my chest ached with equal parts rage and love. "No, Ethan. This is not your fault. Do you hear me?" Tears streaked down his cheeks. "But I made the deal. I said yes. If I hadn't—" "You did it to protect us," I interrupted, gripping his shoulders firmly. "You did it because you're kind. Because you care. That's not weakness. That's strength." "But they're hurting Mom." His voice cracked. I glanced back at Laura. She was shivering, but her eyes were open now, filled with pain and fear. She whispered, "David, they are not going to stop." Her words cut through me. No, they weren't. Not unless we did something. For the next hour, we worked to get Laura stable. I boiled water, filled a hot water bottle, and tucked it under the blankets. Ethan stayed by her side, holding her hand like he was anchoring her to this world. Eventually, the shivering slowed. Her breathing evened out. She looked at me, exhausted but lucid. "We can't stay here," she whispered. I nodded grimly. I had been thinking the same thing. If the shadows could move freely in the house, then our walls weren't protection anymore. They were a cage. "We'll go to my sister's," I said. "It's an hour away. They won't expect us there." Ethan's head snapped up. "No." Both Laura and I turned to him, startled. "They'll follow," he said fiercely. "You don't understand. They're not stuck to this house. They are stuck to me." His words hit like ice water. "Ethan," Laura started, her voice breaking. He shook his head violently. "If we leave, they'll just come with us. And if Aunt Claire and the twins are there," his voice caught, "I don't want them to get hurt too." Silence stretched heavy across the room. He was right. If these things were tied to Ethan, there was no running, no safe house, no escape. That night, after Ethan finally fell into a restless sleep, Laura and I sat in the kitchen, whispering so quietly it felt like sin. "We need help," she said. "Someone who knows what this is. A priest, a psychic, anyone." I shook my head. "And what do we tell them? That our 10-year-old made a deal with shadows, that they attacked you. They'll lock us up before they believe us." Her eyes flashed. "So what? We just sit here and wait for them to drain him dry." I slammed my fist softly against the table, biting back a curse. "No. But we need to be smart. We can't just flail in the dark." Her hand trembled as she reached for mine. "David, I'm scared." I swallowed hard, forcing strength into my voice. "So am I. But we can't show him that. Ethan needs us steady." She nodded, though her tears betrayed her. And we sat there, holding hands in the dim light, two parents staring down something neither of us understood. The next day was worse. Ethan barely spoke. He shuffled through the house like a ghost, his shoulders slumped, his eyes sunken. He refused food, pushing his plate away no matter what Laura cooked. When I asked what was wrong, he whispered, "They are hungry." It chilled me to the bone. "Hungry for what?" I asked carefully. He just shook his head. "You don't want to know." I didn't push. I couldn't. But inside, a storm raged. Every instinct in me screamed to protect him. But how do you protect a child from something that doesn't play by human rules? From something that isn't flesh and blood but shadow and silence? I didn't have the answer. But I knew I had to find one. That night, I set up the laptop again, determined to watch every second of footage. Laura begged me not to. "What if they see you again? What if they pull you in deeper? Then at least I'll know what we're fighting, I said. She didn't argue after that. When the screen flickered on, the hallway came into view. The A shimmered with darkness, the edges of the frame bleeding with shadow. And then Ethan appeared. He wasn't asleep in bed like I thought. He was standing in the hall, barefoot, whispering to the darkness. My stomach twisted. The shadows gathered around him, 3 tall forms, looming and watchful. Ethan looked up at them with red-rimmed eyes. Please, he whispered. Don't hurt them again. Take more from me if you have to, but leave them alone. The tallest shadow bent low, its form rippling. The bond requires balance. Ethan shook his head furiously. No. I told you, I'll give whatever you want. Just not them. The shadows didn't respond. They just stood there, silent, stretching taller, darker, until they filled the hallway. And then the camera feed cut to black. I slammed the laptop shut, my chest heaving. They were breaking him. Piece by piece. At dawn, I made a choice. We can't keep reacting, I told Laura. We have to confront them. On our terms. She looked at me like I was insane. Confront them? David, they're not people. They don't play fair. They know me now, I said. They called me father. That has to mean something. If there's a bond, maybe I can use it. Her eyes filled with fear. And what if they take you instead? Then at least Ethan will be free. Laura choked on a sob. Don't you dare say that. But I had already made up my mind. That night, I sat in the hallway where Ethan usually stood. The air was colder there, charged with an energy that made my skin crawl. I whispered into the dark. I'm here. You said I'm part of this now. So come to me. For a long, breathless moment, nothing happened. Then the temperature dropped. The shadows slid from the walls, forming their towering shapes. The tallest one leaned close. The father bears the weight. Then take it from me, I said, my voice shaking but firm. Leave my wife and son alone. Take whatever you want, just not them. They loomed closer, their presence pressing against me like a heavy tide. Balance must be restored. And then, before I could react, the lights in the house flickered violently. The front door slammed shut on its own. Every window locked with a sharp click. The air filled with a low, vibrating hum. Laura screamed from the bedroom. Ethan shouted my name. The shadows weren't just here anymore. They had trapped us inside, and I never knew silence could feel this heavy. After that night when I froze in front of the screen, when I saw something that changed the way I looked at my own son, everything inside me shifted. The camera had shown me more than I was ready for, more than any parent wants to imagine. It left me with 1,000 questions, and no easy answers. But now, the weight of keeping it all to myself was starting to crack me open. I had promised myself that I wouldn't confront Michael until I understood exactly what I had seen. But every day, every time he walked past me with his backpack slung over his shoulder, or when he sat at the kitchen table sipping milk while scrolling through his phone, I felt like I was living with a stranger. And then came the knock on the door. It was a Sunday afternoon. The air outside was heavy with the smell of rain, and I was halfway through cleaning the living room when I heard it. 3 sharp knocks, loud, too loud, the kind that make you immediately tense. I opened the door to see 2 men. They weren't wearing uniforms, but everything about them screamed authority. Their dark jackets, their stiff posture, their serious faces. Mr. Hayes, one of them asked. Yes, I said cautiously. Would like to talk to you about your son, Michael. The way he said it, so formal, so clipped, sent a cold shiver down my spine. For a moment, I almost lied. I almost told them Michael wasn't home, that maybe they should come back later. But my voice betrayed me. His upstays. What's this about? We'd rather speak inside, the second man said. I hesitated, then stepped aside. My heart was pounding. As they entered, I noticed how one of them scanned the house quickly, like he was taking inventory. They both sat down at the table, but they didn't remove their jackets. I sat across from them, trying to steady my breathing. Your son's name has come up in connection to an investigation, the first man began. We can't share all the details yet, but we need to ask you, has Michael been acting unusual lately? Unusual. The word felt loaded. Images from the camera flashed in my head, things I hadn't told anyone about. Things I still wasn't sure I had even fully understood. He's been quieter than usual, I admitted carefully. But he's a teenager. Isn't that normal? They exchanged a quick glance, subtle but noticeable. Mr. Hayes, the second man leaned forward. It's important that you're honest with us. We're trying to protect him, and possibly others. If there's something going on, now's the time to say it. I felt my mouth go dry. Part of me wanted to spill everything. The footage, the nights I had seen him sneaking out, the faces that sometimes appeared in frame with him. But another part of me screamed to stay quiet. This was my son. What if telling them ruined his life before I even knew the full truth? I don't know anything, I said finally. Michael's a good kid. The first man leaned back, sighing. We'll be in touch again, Mr. Hayes. In the meantime, if you see or hear anything unusual, we expect you to call. He slid a card across the table. I nodded, my fingers trembling as I picked it up. When they left, the silence of the house felt deafening. Upstairs, I heard Michael's door creak open. Who was that? He called down casually. I froze. Should I tell him? Should I lie? Just some guys from the neighborhood, I said finally, looking for donations. There was a pause. Then his door shut again. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat in front of the monitor, watching the live feed from the camera, waiting for something to happen. Hours passed. Midnight came and went. At 2 a.m., I nearly dozed off in the chair. And then I saw it. Michael's door opened slowly. He stepped out, fully dressed in dark clothes, his backpack slung over one shoulder. He moved quietly, careful not to make a sound. I watched him creep down the stairs, pause at the front door, and slip outside. I stayed at the screen, frozen all over again. Every instinct screamed at me to run after him, to grab him, to demand answers. But something inside me whispered, wait, watch. So I did. The camera caught him moving down the street, his figure a shadow under the dim glow of the streetlights. Then another figure appeared, someone taller, broader, waiting at the corner. Michael approached him without hesitation. They exchanged a few words, then walked off together into the night. My hands shook as I reached for the phone. Should I call the number on that card? Should I follow them myself? I didn't move. And then, as if fate itself wanted to punish my hesitation, I heard it, a sharp, distant sound that cut through the night like a crack of thunder. A gunshot. My heart stopped. I bolted upright, knocking the chair over, my body shaking. I rushed to the window, staring into the darkness. But the street was empty. No Michael. No stranger. Just silence. That single sound echoed in my ears, louder than anything I had ever heard in my life. Something had just happened to my son, and I had no idea what. The echo of that gunshot was still ringing in my ears when I stumbled out of the house. My legs felt like they were made of lead, but my heart pounded hard enough to keep me moving. The rain had finally started, pelting against the pavement in icy sheets as I sprinted down the street, desperate to catch sight of my son. The neighborhood was dark, only a few porch lights glowing faintly through the misty night. I ran past fences, yards, and mailboxes, every sound amplified in the stillness. My chest burned, my throat dry, but I didn't stop. Michael! I yelled into the night, my voice cracking. Michael! No answer. I kept running until I reached the corner where I had last seen him with that man. The street was deserted. No sign of my boy, no trace of anyone. Just puddles reflecting the orange glow of the streetlight and the chilling emptiness of a place that had just swallowed my son. I fell to my knees, my palms pressing into the wet pavement. The tears mixed with the rain streaming down my face. The card the agents had given me was still in my pocket, soaked but intact. My fingers fumbled to pull it out, my mind screaming at me to call, to do something before it was too late. But just as I was about to dial, headlights swept across the street. A dark sedan slowed near the corner, its tires hissing against the wet road. My body stiffened. The passenger window rolled down. Mr. Hayes, a voice called out. It was the same agent who had visited my house earlier. I staggered to my feet, water dripping from my clothes. Where's my son? I screamed. You said you'd protect him. Where is he? The agent stepped out, his jacket pulled tight against the rain. Get in the car. Now. I didn't argue. My mind was in chaos, but the only thought that mattered was finding Michael. I slid into the back seat, my heart hammering so hard I thought it would burst. The car took off, speeding through the slick streets. The other agent was driving, his face grim in the glow of the dashboard. Tell me what's going on, I demanded. What's happening to my son? The man beside me glanced back. His eyes were hard but not cruel. We told you, Mr. Hayes. Michael's involved in something dangerous. We've been watching him for weeks. Tonight, things escalated. Escalated. I snapped. He's just a kid. He's not just a kid anymore, the driver muttered. Not with what he knows. Not with who he's been meeting. My stomach twisted. The words felt like knives. The sedan screeched to a stop near the edge of an old industrial district. The rain here was heavier, the air smelling of rust and oil. Warehouses loomed in the shadows, their windows dark and broken. This way, the agent said, stepping out. We ran through the puddles, our shoes splashing in rhythm. My eyes darted everywhere, searching desperately for a glimpse of Michael. My voice cracked again. Michael, where are you? And then I saw him. He was standing near one of the warehouses, soaked to the bone, his backpack lying open at his feet. His face was pale, his eyes wide, his hands trembling. But what froze me wasn't him. It was the man standing across from him, holding a gun. I felt my knees weaken, my entire body screaming to run to him, to shield him. But the agent grabbed my arm, holding me back. Don't, he whispered. The man with the gun barked something at Michael, too far for me to hear clearly over the rain. Michael shook his head, his lips moving in defiance. And then, everything happened at once. The gun fired. A flash of light cut through the night. I screamed, my voice tearing out of my throat. But Michael didn't fall. Instead, the agent beside me raised his weapon, firing back. The gunman staggered, then collapsed into the mud. I broke free and ran, my heart nearly exploding. Michael. He looked at me with wide, tear-filled eyes. Dad! I wrapped my arms around him, holding him as tightly as I could, my body shaking with relief and fear all at once. You're okay, I whispered, though my voice cracked. You're okay. The agents rushed forward, one of them kicking the gun out of the fallen man's hand. We need to move. Now. What the hell is happening? I shouted. The agent looked me dead in the eyes. Your son has been used, Mr. Hayes. They've been grooming him, using him to pass messages, deliver things he didn't even understand. He's in deeper than you realize. Michael buried his face against my chest, sobbing. I didn't know, Dad. I swear I didn't know. I stroked his hair, my own tears mixing with the rain. It's okay, son. It's okay. We'll fix this. We'll get through this. But even as I said it, I knew nothing would ever be the same. The agents hustled us into the car, their radios crackling with urgent voices. We've got him. Target neutralized. Requesting backup. The ride back felt like a blur. Michael clung to me, shaking, while I stared out the window, trying to piece together the fragments of a life that had just shattered in one night. By the time we got home, dawn was breaking. The rain had stopped, leaving the streets glistening under the pale morning light. Inside, the house felt foreign. Too quiet. Too normal after everything. Michael sat at the table, his hands wrapped around a mug of hot cocoa I made him, though he barely touched it. His eyes were distant, haunted. I sat across from him, my heart aching. Why, Michael? Why didn't you tell me what was going on? He shook his head slowly. I thought I was helping. They told me it was just favors. Carrying a bag, delivering notes. They said it was nothing. And I believed them. I reached across the table, holding his hand. You're my son. You should never have to carry something like this alone. Tears filled his eyes again. I didn't want to disappoint you. You've always told me to do the right thing, to be kind. I thought if I just kept it quiet, maybe it would go away. My chest tightened. How much pain had he been hiding just to keep me proud? That was when I realized something. This wasn't just about what I had seen on the camera. This wasn't just about secrets or danger. This was about empathy, about listening, about being there even when it's messy and uncomfortable. We sat in silence for a long time, father and son, two broken pieces trying to fit back together. But peace didn't last. That evening, as the sun dipped low and the house grew quiet again, I heard another knock at the door. My stomach dropped instantly. I opened it to see the agent once more. His face was grim. "Mr. Hayes, we've got a problem." My throat went dry. "What now?" The agent glanced over his shoulder, then back at me. "The man tonight wasn't working alone. There are others, and they know Michael didn't go through with it. They'll come looking." The words hit me like a hammer. My blood ran cold. Michael stepped into the hallway, his face pale, his eyes wide. "Dad, what does that mean?" I didn't answer. I couldn't, because in that moment, I realized the nightmare wasn't over. It was just beginning. If you've been following this story, you know how quickly life can change in ways you never expect. Stories like this remind us to pay attention, to listen, and to protect the people we love before it's too late. If this kept you hooked until the very end, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so you don't miss the next story. And tell me in the comments, what would you have done if you were in my shoes?